Today's episode's brought to you by D-Fuel. That's right, the Dallas Fuel now with less lead and less throwing, more 2-0 weeks. D-Fuel, use the promo code High Noon at checkout.
It's High Noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I am your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Nothing, man. If we don't have a G Fuel sponsorship after the quality of that open, I don't know what the idiots over at G Fuel are doing with their sponsorships. They're screwing up because that was smooth.
They done goofed. That was off the cuff.
Maybe we should stop mentioning lead.
I mean, they should pay us. Less lead.
We'll stop
I said
mentioning
less
lead when they
lead.
start paying us. How about that?
Yeah, they're not a sponsor. I don't care.
We don't owe you nothing.
I don't owe you anything. In fact, you may owe us. That's all I'm saying. Now we're going to charge more than a normal sponsor. So take that. Just please give us money. Yeah. Good week for the Dallas Fuel fans. Maybe the Blue Bag podcast is a few extra weeks away from actually getting started now. They actually took the bags off and are willing to show their heads. But we got a lot to talk about today. It's not just the Dallas Fuel actually getting a couple of wins. We have got to talk about what we've done as the High Noon Productions this week. Of course, we had a new High Noon Podcast Top 10. You can check that out on the YouTube page. No, around the payload last week. Again, we're going to bi-weekly. A lot of people are asking that. At some point, it's possible. It's not going to be this season. Maybe for season 2, we might be able to get it to weekly. But it's just everyone is... it's just tough to schedule it out for every week. So right now we're going bi-weekly, but we do have a new episode coming out tomorrow. And I've got some spicy guests, a couple of new ones coming on. I won't give anything away quite yet. And I don't mean mystery guests this time. I've got guests, not mystery guests yet. Only the pre-show people know what the mystery guest is. But we had another Blackwatch report, I believe. Yes, we definitely had another Blackwatch report. So all of your Path to Pro and Contenders information that you're looking for, go follow Blackwatch report. They are on their own iTunes feed. And I believe
presumably wrap up now, right? Because the Contenders finished up. They crowned their champions. So this week's episode, I believe, should be wrap up and discussion of the finals. So
yeah, I believe they did that. And I think Thorne is actually backlogging and putting the episodes onto YouTube now as well, so you might be able to check them out on their YouTube as well. And then actually right before this we have another doubleheader, double feature day today where Foul Play was recorded right before the flagship show, not because we like doing the double features, not that we don't like it, but instead because Winston's Lab doesn't get the stats out on Sundays anymore for some reason. And when they do, sometimes they're just off by a significantly large margin of points. But this is not the complaint about Winston's Lab show. That's Foul Play. But you can definitely check out Foul Play. And our newest show on the network, of course, is All Things Considered, hosted by Taco, who you've seen on Around the Payload. You've seen on the flagship many times. You've seen him over at OverwatchScore.com. New episode of All Things Considered. So we messed up. Last week was not the episode with Deathblow. It was actually an episode with Sideshow, the desk analyst for Overwatch League. This week is the best episode you'll hear of All Things Considered, featuring Deathblow.
Yeah, we recorded it a good little while ago, but we were also, I think it was during the bye-week break. So his episodes tend to go more into not necessarily like current event style, what's going on with this team right now. They do discuss that a little bit at times, but more league as a whole type stuff. And yeah, so at least the plan is to release the episode with me this week. I know this is the third time we've told you that, so maybe we'll just bring in another episode in front of me anyways and just let the meme keep rolling.
Nope, but it's too late. It's technically it's already out if you look for it.
Yeah, it's on his feed. Darn well.
Yeah.
All
Also,
right, the
he
meme
linked
is
it
dead.
to me, so it's not. The Blev train cannot be stopped.
But nonetheless, yeah. Now I think basically he just didn't want to peak in episode 2, right? He preferred to peak as far as getting the best possible guest for episode 3. So that's
right. And he still can have his trash can episode when he gets me on there as well. We can still peak at the bottom.
That'll be the end, right?
Yeah,
that'll be the last episode.
Last episode. Yeah, not getting renewed for another season. That's for sure. But actually, I don't have a smooth segue, but I'll just mention it. I did a little bit of digging, put my old Get Interviews cap back on, and I got a nice little interview lined up. I actually, right before we started recording, I've got another one lined up for a little bit further out that even Deathblow doesn't know about yet. But there's one that Deathblow does know about that's confirmed, and it will be a returning guest and one of a fan favorite High Noon Hot Seat from quite some time ago. So leave a comment and guess who it is. And if you're right, then I'll give you a thumbs up on the next episode or something stupid. Maybe even something dumber. It is absolutely not Deathblow. Deathblow already wasted his guess. Although that would be kind of interesting to do a High Noon Hot Seat where we each interview each other. Maybe the next 2 April Fools will be those. Who knows? But that's enough talking about the shows. Let's talk about what we did last week. Man, I got all this phlegm in my mouth right now. Deathblow, anything fun and exciting going on for you?
The hunt for the new car. I think I mentioned last week's episode. I got into a bit of an accident over the weekend, so looking for a new car. I think we may have found one. That's been kind of most of my week. Other than that, I've just been crying into a big old pile of salt as an Outlaws fan. Not much else I can do after this week's matchups there. But honestly, no, the Overwatch League this week was great. The playoffs race is
Playoffs.
So interesting. It's kind of ridiculous. And in a different way, it's like nobody wants to make it at the moment is a little bit what it feels like. Like everybody's like,
New
no,
York
I
has
want to
already
be
made
place. Right. Yeah. New York's locked in.
It's like we don't want to play anymore. We don't care about the money. I don't want to be in the playoffs anymore.
So yeah, things are heating up, and I'm getting very excited about it. Outlaws inclusion in the playoffs or not, they're going to be absolutely sick. I'm really excited, and it's tough right now. I'm currently going through the problems of like, what do I care about, stage playoffs or end of season playoffs? And I'll always care about end of season playoffs more, but now they overlap, so like the races are simultaneous and things are crazy, and the teams that are surging right now are typically ones that are not in the playoff race at the moment, which creates 2 very different conversations. This is something that I did worry about a little bit. You know, how would this feel? Not that it was necessarily be a bad thing, but just something we're currently going through. And so, you know, I don't know, just something interesting I wanted to bring up. This kind of weird dynamic of 2 different playoffs happening at the same time. And for some of the teams, it's literally the only thing left that matters. And for other teams, they don't care about it, but they need to get there in order to make it to the end of season playoffs too. So it's just been kind of different and weird at the moment, but I'm enjoying it nonetheless.
Yeah, it's like, okay, Dallas, Fuel, Florida, and Shanghai mathematically out, can't possibly make it. But San Francisco, I don't think we can mathematically put a pin in it. I think there's a certain amount of there's some circumstances where if the stars align and they win everything, they could make the end of season playoffs.
So they are currently 6 games out with 6 games to play. And I think that puts a fork in them because...
Oh, there's only 6 games. I was thinking there was 8 games for some reason. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's 6 games left to play. And I think because of map differential for them being at -11 right now, I think not only do they need to win out, and then they need the Gladiators to lose out. They can't catch anybody else, so the best they can possibly do is 6th place. And they would need to make up along with those wins. But but the thing about that is, right, is if that were to happen, right, then the map differential would probably happen anyways, right? Or at least would get very close. But the thing to remember here is that 1 match win for the LA Gladiators or 1 match loss for the San Francisco Shock does mathematically eliminate them. We've been talking about this. They're not making it.
It's not going to make it. This is probably the last time we're going to be able to even talk about it.
Right. It's not going to happen. But although, you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, there's definitely a chance.
Technically,
they have that outside shot at it. But it's still essentially a 7-man race for spots 2 through 6.
Yeah. But for me, obviously, this was a great and momentous week for me because my boys, NYXL, locked in that first place spot, good for $300,000. Not that we as the viewers really care, but it is nice. It is nice for NYXL fans because I mean, you win a bunch of money for a team. You've got good feelings about the team and the staff and the coaching staff. B, now the organization has that little extra bit, I guess that extra at least $150K worth of cheddar to dole out for contracts for season 2. So definitely a good time to be an NYXL fan. It's always been a good time. There was literally never been a bad time. Literally never been a bad time.
I do want to use this as kind of an opportunity to sit here and really take note of what they've really been able to do, because it's honestly been really, really impressive. The fact that they currently sit at only 3 losses, when we look at individual stage performances of teams that had fewer than 3 losses in a single stage, you've got Boston last stage at 10-0. You've got the London Spitfire at 8-2 in stage 2, and then you have 2 teams again. The London Spitfire again 7-3. The Outlaws were 7-3. The Valiant were 7-3. Seoul were 7-3. So it is a small conversation. Like the number of teams that have been able to finish stages with as few wins as the Excelsior currently have on the season is a very, very small list. So I have a feeling this is going to stand as the most dominant performance from any Overwatch League team for a few years. I'm guessing 4 or 5 seasons maybe go by before
I think so.
We see anything close to this. You know, and we talked going into the season and everything about how the days of the superpowers are done. This is what you get left, right? When you talk about a superpower, this is now what we're going to be seeing and what we're going to have. And they've proven to be beatable. I mean, the records before were like 60-something-0.
Or Envious, Envious. It was never even a conversation. Like we would be picking them 4-0 every time. There would be no 3-1s. There would be no Cowards 3-0. We'd be picking Envious to 4-0 every single Gosu Gamers Weekly. I mean, we have episodes where we did this for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months. I mean, this is the type of dominant that is healthy, I think. I mean, this is the top amount of dominance that's healthy for a sport, right? Because any more than this, and it's like, okay, well, this is people lose interest. I think there's a little bit of at least some people losing interest in it. It's like, oh, well, New York's going to win. But I haven't heard nearly as much of that. And a lot of the, we should just call it Korean Overwatch League. That's died down a lot because those people, they don't tend to back up their statements when they're wrong. And they tend to go away.
The only true Korean team is currently not in the playoffs right now. Obviously, you have New York and London in first and second, but London is a soft 2. They are literally
almost
like
10 games out of first place.
Yeah, they're 1 match away from being in 5th or 6th place, as things currently stand right now. So, the Korean powerhouse thing is, I mean, it's real. Like things are kind of shaping up the way we outlined it going in, right? And it's not so much that the top end of the Korean talent was heads and shoulders better than everybody else in every other scene, but the depth of it was just what was really remarkable. The fact that they're able to field how many Korean players across the top 8 teams that are in contention right now is just really, really impressive and speaks a lot to the infrastructure that they had going into it. But yeah, I mean, not to pat ourselves on the back too much. I do think we called that one a little bit where, the top end isn't necessarily heads and shoulders better, but there's just a lot more top end players in that scene. We're seeing that a lot of the pickups, a lot of the big impactful pickups have come from the Korean scene as well. So it's a whole lot of fun and a lot more to come. So we're spending a little time, as we probably will in the next couple of weeks, remembering to look back at what's going on and what's already happened and trying to put it in perspective. But that's very difficult to do.
I almost want to do an episode where we just analyze our preseason predictions, like our hot takes for the before the preseason.
We've got to plan out our off-season schedule, so we'll probably include something like that where we look back at our bold predictions episode, see what we got right, what we didn't get there. We'll also probably spend entire episodes devoted to each one of these teams to discuss what worked for them, what didn't. things like that. So if you have any ideas about what we can do in the off season and
anything you'd like
ways
to see
to remember these, these teams in this opening season, definitely do let us know. Discord.me/High Noon Podcast. Join us. Talk to us about what we can do to start thinking about the off season now, because sadly we're getting so close to it so fast. It's scary.
It is scary.
I don't want to lose Overwatch League.
At the very least, we are going to get to celebrate at the actual finals, which is awesome.
Yes, that is awesome.
But let's move along. That is just not the right document. Let's move along and talk about the favorite segment of the show.
Yeah.
Overwatch Today, meme of the week.
That, of course, is the meme of the week. And this one comes to us courtesy of Tucker Roberts, the president of the Philadelphia Fusion. So it was in response to a Houston Outlaws tweet that says, "We're so close to 100,000 followers. We've got something special for you when we hit it." Eyes looking rock devil hand symbol. Tucker responds, "Is it a tracer? Is it a tracer player? Question mark." Just so savage. So savage.
Spit and fire. A little bit, like I said in the pre-show. It's a little bit low-hanging fruit, right? We're not even a tracer meta, Tucker, but nonetheless, you're super not wrong. So
100% correct.
It's valid. And I just love, and I think it's a great thing for Philly. Like we said before, there's no way Mr. Wilpon is paying attention to Overwatch League. There's no way Mr. Kroenke is following everything going on with the Gladiators and knows all that stuff. I love that Tucker is a little bit more hands-on, is plugged in and
quite hands-on.
And we don't know to what extent he's involved in the management of the team, stuff like that. But we've seen in sports a variety of success for very active owners. But nonetheless, I just like that whether he's hands-on managing or not, he's hands-on interested, and he's really paying attention, and I love that it's been able to grab him and keep his attention, and he does seem to really be enjoying himself. He's a really great figure for the Overwatch League to have as an owner. Really happy to him, despite his sick burn on my team. Screw you, Tucker.
It was a really good one. Nothing can be taken away from that. I had a runner-up one, and I just completely forgot it.
To answer your question, Tucker, no.
It is certainly not a tracer player.
They have one. It's Clockwork.
Yeah. Yikes. Let's move on to the next segment here.
It's high news.
High news. We got basically this one comes as a little bit sad, but it turns out to be maybe happy. We have the
both suffered defeats this week.
That's true. We sure did. We have the second round for the Overwatch World Cup community lead members has come out, and sadly, I did not make the cut. So rigged, of course. Obviously, Blizzard has something against us, and me specifically. I mean, it's just obvious. But with that being said, you can go to the Overwatch World Cup website and check out the community lead nominations. Basically, I mean, there's just a bunch of people from all over, but we are going to give our official recommendation and endorsement to
Kareev. No.
Not Kareev, who is an Overwatch League player, and his fake account is, I mean, he might be eligible. I don't know. It kind of makes me really sick to my stomach that the fake Kareev account made it and I didn't, but that's another story.
My favorite part about it.
Okay, so I've got two endorsements. One is my official endorsement, which is don't vote for the screaming shot guy. That's my official no. My official endorsement is, of course, for friend of the show and longtime Overwatch podcaster, Kick Tripod. If you're unfamiliar with him, if you've heard of Overwatch League Daily, that's him. He started that. He did the Payload podcast beforehand. I met John, this has been 3 years? No, 2 years ago. I don't know, some number of years more than one ago at TwitchCon, and I've been on the Payload before. He's been on Around the Payload. We've done some other collab stuff as well. Really great guy, and honestly, like the Overwatch League Daily Show has been an extremely ambitious project that has been I can't even really I can only barely imagine how much work it is, considering he's done 100 episodes of it since December, which is a feat in and of itself. It's been he's created a different type of a different digestible bite of content from a lot of what a lot of the other podcasts have done. So really great job there, and just being a part of the community. So my official recommendation is go vote for Kicked, #vote Kicked.
We like to think of ourselves as pretty hardworking podcasters within the community. Kick Tripod puts us to shame. He hands down, if it can't be Blevins, I would put my support behind you if you'd made it. But if it can't be Blevins, I can't think of a better person.
No, you 100% would vote for the shot guy.
I mean, Kareev. Yeah, Kareev and shot guy, I would definitely vote for over you. But I mean, you're like a marginally distant third in that.
Man, all I'm saying is that the world is now going to miss the extensive campaign that I had set and ready to go. So you guys messed up. That's all I'm saying.
People didn't want to vote for memes. That's what it was.
A vote for not me is a vote against memes. But now, #vote Kicked. Yes. But let's move on to...
It's tournament talk.
Okay, we will. I am going to go over real quickly the scores from last week, and then we'll talk about a couple of news points during the week. So, starting off on Wednesday, May 23rd, we had the Dallas Fuel upset the Boston Uprising 3-0. Although maybe it's less of an upset than I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's an upset. But we had the LA Valiant beat Florida Mayhem 3-1, and then the LA Gladiators took down the Houston Outlaws 3-1 as well. Thursday, we had London Spitfire eke out a win 3-2 versus the San Francisco Shock. We had LA Gladiators 4-0 the Florida Mayhem, and Philadelphia Fusion 4-0 Shanghai Dragons. On Friday, May 25th, we had Los Angeles Valiant 3-2 over the Boston Uprising, NYXL 4-0 over Seoul Dynasty, San Francisco Shock, cover your ears, death, 4-0 versus the Houston Outlaws. And then on Saturday, we rounded out the week with London Spitfire taking down Seoul 3-2, NYXL with a 5-0, okay, it was actually only 4, versus the Shanghai Dragons, and then the Dallas Fuel opening up and closing out the week with a W, 3-1 over the Philadelphia Fusion.
Yeah, don't worry, man. I don't need to close my ears. It's permanently burned into my retinas, that scoreline. So even if I could tune out all sound, I would still have to close my eyes and see that scoreboard at the end of the day. But big week for, I mean, honestly, overall, a ton of surprises still. Yeah. Like we mentioned, you know, the playoff race is really heating up, and I don't know that much clarification is happening. I think there's more candidates to fall out this week than there were last week, and there are fewer candidates to take their spot at the moment, or at least less likely candidates, not necessarily fewer. But things are definitely getting crazy, and they're going to start to quickly shape into form a little bit, and we'll start to be able to make a little bit more sense of it going forward. But right now we're in that perfect spot where we're still far enough out that absolutely anything can happen, and it's just a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's only a few constants right now, and it's NYXL being, I mean, they're secured first place. Nothing can change there going into the playoffs. And then, like, everyone below Shock is mathematically out, and then Shock are, for all intents and purposes, out. Shock are the moon shot right now, but for the rest of for the sake of discussion, for the rest of the show, we're just going to count them out, and we'll continue to talk about them if they keep winning 2-0. We'll talk. That will be the Cinderella story.
Keep
but
losing.
Right, and yeah, right.
Or start losing, not even keep losing, because they're not.
Right, exactly. So this is probably the last that you'll hear about the San Francisco Shock in the playoff race, but. Just know it's technically possible as of the recording of this episode. But we saw a couple of interesting things happen this week. And one was our boy, or I guess formerly your fantasy boy, Shadowburn. Shadowburn back in for EQO, man. What's up with that?
Yeah, so EQO I mean, honestly, the whole Philadelphia Fusion, but EQO a little bit specifically, just looked really, really bad in that final match against the Dallas Fuel.
Philly's back again.
Yeah, it's been a really crazy up and down season for Philadelphia here. If they were as consistent in their play as they were in their CEO's meme making abilities, it would be maybe perhaps a little different story here. But honestly, that matchup was kind of like the Dallas Fuel coming out of nowhere to like represent Texas as a whole and give Houston considerably better playoff percentages going into the week.
Yeah.
Didn't undo the damage of the loss to San Francisco, obviously, but right now we're really seeing Dallas and San Francisco very specifically embrace and to full effect play the spoiler role. That's really all that's left for them at this point in the season. And it's honestly, despite my personal heartbreak right now, making things incredibly fun and incredibly interesting. So, glad to see them get their moment in the sun here in stage 4. But yeah, when we look at this matchup in particular, I wasn't sure when it happened. EQO has proven he can play Pharah and he can play it pretty well. But I think Shadowburn's always been the best Pharah on this team. So I don't know how much of it was necessarily performance based, but I'm sure it was spurred by that, right? Like there has to have been at least some consideration and some practice to use Shadowburn in the Pharah role since it's popular in the meta right now. It's going to be really interesting going forward how they plan to do this, right? Because EQO had that stabilizing effect on this roster when he joined. And I think maybe it was just kind of like a honeymoon period or something like that, but it's clearly worn off. They still obviously 100% have that upwards potential to play with anybody. They're one of the teams that you have to think would be able to give New York a run for their money across a playoff series, assuming they're playing well. When they show up and play like this, they're not going to do anything. And if they show up and play like this on the day when they might have to play 2 matches in a 3-game set, they're obviously just done. But so I don't know. Things are a little bit up in the air in Philadelphia right now. I didn't think Sato and Hotba really looked in full form in that matchup. I've really been waiting for them to really take off. And we talked about this week as not even a testing ground for those two. The opponents were too easy for us to learn anything about Sato and Hotba this week. And it turns out we learned a little bit here. So Philly's got some work to do. They're still, I think they're currently sitting in 6th place right now, or no, 5th place, but very, very close to the bubble here. And there's a lot of teams that are trying a little bit harder than them to knock themselves out. And looking at you, Boston in particular, London seems to have rebounded a little bit, but I mean, what 1 week of looking really good does just gets you to plan an episode like we did last week where we were all in on Houston, and then what happens the next week, you just never know right now. And so, yeah, I don't know. We're going to have to keep an eye on that Shadowburn versus EQO lineup spot. I think it's going to be a big deal for Philly, and I think they might want to move themselves into more of a rotation, especially while Pharah's so good right now. Let Shadowburn run that. If he's your best Pharah, let him do it, and then use EQO on the other spots, or the spots where maybe you're not so locked in on the Pharah and you want some more flexibility, something like that. I don't know, but it always felt wrong to me that Shadowburn was on the bench, and watching him play and just the ability he has to make plays and to create highlight reel moments tells me the man needs to be starting in this league. We need more teams. It's just we don't have enough teams to showcase all of the talent that these teams have.
I think the thing about Shadowburn was that he was a very predictable player, and you knew that like he was a very Dragon Blade centric Genji player. So like you knew like, oh well, it's been 30 minutes since we've had a Dragon Blade. He's just waiting for the opportune time, and it's like, okay, we can play around that to some extent. EQO was a little bit more consistent, a little more aggressive, a little bit harder to play around. And it may just be that they didn't have the tape on him. I mean, you watch Shadowburn play 30 games, you know what he's going to do. And now it's gotten to that point where we've seen EQO as much as those teams had seen Shadowburn. So maybe they're just getting used to him, honestly. So it might just be, even if one player is not necessarily better than the other, or maybe they're the same in terms of impact that they have, you might just want to switch up your DPS player, because if you've been running EQO for the past 2 stages, now these teams have 2 stages worth of tape, and even if you're actively trying to play random or not predictable, you're still going to have patterns that you can play around. So
Every player has tendencies, and unless you're
absolutely.
Carpe, unless you're Striker, unless those tendencies are to just destroy the other team,
Right.
then you're going to be able to get some sort of book on that.
Yeah, tendencies and comfort spots, and like when you're in a high intensity spot, like you're going to revert back to, okay, I know this works and this feels good. I'm going to keep doing that. Not that you should do that necessarily. You should stick to the plan, but that's just not how it works in a high pressure situation. So
every team has that fallback comfort pick.
Exactly. But so Philly, I think, is definitely, I mean, it's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. We thought it was gone. It is not. I mean, for what it's worth, Dallas is looking pretty good. I mean, it was kind of the first week, so they beat Boston and they beat Florida. So looking back now, at first it was like, oh, they beat Boston. Man, Philly is crushing. Boston didn't lose in stage 2 or in stage 3. Excuse me. And now they beat Boston. Man, Philly's the real deal. And then week 2, not so much. They lose, or they lose against the Dallas Fuel. But now, like, if you look back again, like, okay, and they beat Shanghai. Who cares? But you look back again, like, Dallas is actually looking pretty good right now. They got a new coach. It seems like Mickey has really found his place as Brigitte. Obviously, a very sort of aggressive diva. That sort of aggressive diva play wasn't really working for them, and now he gets to play Brigitte. That was my other meme of the week. I'll get back to it in a second. We're doing 5 different tangents here. I don't care. Yeah, it seems like Dallas Fuel's actually in a really good spot right now. So, I mean, I'm not counting Philly out at all because I think Dallas is actually a pretty decent team right now. That being said, still not the best performance. So the runner-up meme of the week was the video that Overwatch League produced on how to pronounce Brigitte, which I just thought was funny because we had a lot of flack in our channel, in our Discord, about pronouncing Brigitte incorrectly.
And in our YouTube
comments. All that stuff. Direct messages. I mean, I'm just saying, it wasn't just us, okay?
Yeah.
It's not just us.
Apparently it's the same thing, right? When you flood Overwatch League with comments about how there's inconsistency in how to pronounce the super difficult to pronounce name, you end up getting a very sarcastic, dry-witted reply, which is to purposefully screw it up a whole bunch and rub it in your face.
I like to think that because we had the episode where we purposely... Oh, by the way, it was a bit, guys and gals. I named the episode. Yes, it's a bit. I went super meta on that one. I like to think that because we did an entire episode where we purposely and hilariously mispronounced Brigitte for the entire episode.
Fair Betty, yep.
I think Bargatti. I think we got exactly what we needed to as the trolls that we are. Okay, back to the news. So Philly, I wouldn't count them out yet. Obviously, they have a lot of skin in the game right now. So,
and a cushion too. They do got a little bit of space.
I would really be hard struck to call what they have a cushion right now.
Well,
I mean,
it's 2 games. They're 2 games away.
1
so
week.
2 game cushion.
1 week is all it takes. So just for reference, again, we're not counting San Francisco here. Houston is in 8th place on the season with at 18-16, so they have 18 wins, and then at 6th place currently right now is 20 wins. So I mean, Houston is just as out as Philly is in. Next week could literally flip flop potentially. So
you look at the matchups, it almost feels likely.
It almost exactly. And then you've got Philly is at +1 at 21, and then all 3 London, LA Valiant, and Boston all at 22 wins, and then of course New York is sitting pretty. They literally don't need to show up. They've already secured first place. Wouldn't that be interesting if they just literally didn't show up? They're just like, yeah, we're taking a week off. You guys get a win.
Philly?
No. New York.
New York. I was gonna say Philly's gonna do that again. Shout out to preseason Philly. But Yeah, no, I mean they for all intents and purposes could. This is honestly, I'm a little bitter that like New York doesn't have the full roster, so that they can't use this time to like
Do
develop
garbage
talent
time.
and take a look at people
Right. I
and
want to
you
see a
know
lot of Pine. I want to
this
see
is
a lot of Pine.
yeah, that's terrifying that when they want to like take it easy and
Yeah,
throw or whatever, they could just, they're still playing Pine.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, but yeah. And just kind of put a bow on that point I was making. Like
Yeah.
if you had the deeper bench and they were able to do that, and they were able to show that maybe they had a support player that was really really good. I mean, not Jonak level, but really really good. Now you can trade him. Right, you can go into the offseason, you can pick up his option to renew his second year, and then you can trade that player off. So it almost feels like a lost opportunity for New York in a way, but nonetheless, they certainly could. They could take 3 weeks off and still.
Yeah, they literally don't need to play the rest of the stage, and they have first play. They can literally just go back to Korea until finals. Until finals.
It's going to be a long time before New York plays a match that matters to them. That's what. That's all.
Which is almost kind of a bad thing because you lose that. I think a little bit.
You lose that edge some, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but let's move on. Little bit of turmoil in Boston, as we've talked about. But Aim God seems like he's keeping the roster spot over Neko. What are your thoughts here, Death?
Well, I thought Aim God's performed really, really well on a team that's performing really, really poorly. Statistically speaking, he's looked good, and this goes back to his first match was, I believe, the one against Houston in Week 1. Boston got pretty well bodied there. They did win the one map Oasis, which is really the one in the pool that is very skewed against Houston. So they were able to steal that one, but for the most part, they got pretty well crushed in the other 3 matches. And Aim God just statistically outperformed Neko top to bottom. And it has a little bit of a feeling. It's hard to judge it when the team's not winning, right? And they're doing so poorly as a group. But I think just purely looking at the numbers, I think he looks, and not to take anything away from Neko, but he looks like maybe a slightly better version of Neko. So hopefully if they're able to get things squared away a little bit and keep enough consistency to stay in the playoffs, crazy to think they might go from 2 to 7 potentially in the final stage, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility after the 0-4 start. If they can get there, I think Aim God might be kind of the final evolution of the roster and what they're able to do. So a good kind of last second pickup. I think he was basically the last pickup. He actually was announced after the He Who Must Not Be Named news. And so he came in very late, after the window. Even he was obviously already signed, but the announcement
was after.
Yep. So crazy to see kind of that last second addition seem to make a big difference. But he's had some really really standout performances on the end, so I like it there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Neko has been so good lately, but Boston now is just. I mean, they've shown like they're able to adapt in terms of their players being able to move around. Obviously, mistakes kind of stepped up. So after, again, He Who Must Not Be Named. Boston has really not been. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if we look back and asked stage 1 version of us, hey, do you think? Well, I guess maybe like mid to late stage 1. Hey, if Dive is dead, how good is Boston going to be? We would probably predict about how well they're doing right now, right? Like, it's like if Striker can't, go ham on Tracer, like what do they have? And we're starting to see that now is maybe not so
underwhelming
much.
Tanks, underwhelming DPS, solid supports.
What they need to figure out is something, because right now they are in that 3-way tie for second place. But again, like there's enough. They don't have enough of a cushion here. They have more of a cushion than Philly, but they really don't have a cushion here. They need to pick up some wins to put them over. I'm wondering if we'll probably be able. We'll probably be able to figure out maybe while we're talking about it what's the number you need to hit, how many wins do you need to hit to secure yourself, but that's probably too hard with so many ties.
Yeah, I think that'll be more clear next week.
Yeah. Aim God over Neko. I mean, keep running what's working. Like don't rest on the past, especially considering that now is not the time to be like, well, it worked back then, let's try it out. Nope. You need to do what's working now, and you need to push it if you want any sort of chance in the playoffs. So moving on, last thing we want to talk about here specifically is like Houston, man. Like, what happened? Like, they were so week one and week two, like, or in week one, they were so like we were so excited. I mean, even going into week one, it was like Brigitte seems like it's going to be a very good thing for them. And then week one, it's like, wow, they performed exactly how we wanted them to and how we thought they were going to. And then, I mean, losing against the Gladiators, really not anything to, be sad about necessarily. Gladiators, very strong looking team right now. But, like, I mean, for what it's worth, Shock is also looking pretty good. But, like, that is not the law. That is really not the loss you're expecting here as a team that we pegged as potentially a top team in the stage.
Yeah, when you're on the outside looking in the playoff race, you can't be losing to teams below you, because when you do, it mandates that you now go out there and win against the team that's above you in the standings. So obviously that makes things very, very difficult. You have to then find and make up that win on an individual basis, which is really hard to do, because honestly, most of their games going forward, at least this week and I believe next week, are against teams that are behind them in the standings. They play against Shanghai and they play against Florida this week. Next week they play against Dallas, and I'm blanking on the other team.
Looking right now.
Probably the Valiant, if I had to guess.
It's Valiant, yep. And Dallas.
So they're going to have to pull out that win against Valiant now. That was one that maybe they could have made it even if they didn't win, but I think that's winnable for them. The answer to what is Houston is it's somewhere in between what we saw against San Francisco and what we saw last week, right? It's somewhere in between, and we don't really know exactly where. Like you said, the loss to the Gladiators, it didn't look bad to me. I mean, there was the Hanamura map where they just refused to switch off dive against an anti-dive composition. They couldn't even get in, and everybody really wanted to beat up Jake for that. But honestly, if you go back and watch the next match of the week last week from the Gladiators, I'm blanking on who they played against off the top of my head. I'm trying to remember.
Last week?
It was against Florida.
Yeah.
You had considerably better tracer play from Florida. Obviously, Houston's got the worst tracer play in the league, and it just didn't matter, right? Like, to me, that was like Surefour was just standing on his head and saying nobody's gonna backline us here, right? Like, it was just, they were handled, right? And when you watch it play, I mean, if the tracer dies immediately after the blink, did the tracer do anything wrong, or did the Widow just hit the headshot and was ridiculous? So it was definitely questionable that they didn't switch. I would have liked to have seen them try maybe Jake on go into double sniper or something like that, or maybe go for the Pharah and try to go up and around the Orisa shield that was troubling them. I don't really know. But that was one map in a match that honestly, going into it, we talked about it, match of the week. There was no match closer. This was two teams that looked at the top of their game. To lose that 3-1 isn't a big deal to me. The matchup against the Shock, they came out a different team, or maybe didn't come out of the locker room at all. They just kind of stayed in there. They didn't show up. They didn't play. They weren't subbing in Spree that I can really remember. They were playing, like, Cool Matt was on the Zarya a little bit, and it just seemed like they seemed so disturbed and so off after the loss to the Gladiators that they were playing like a team that was already eliminated and basically out of the playoffs already. They were like shattered, like their season was broken. And it wasn't, and it's still not right now. They're still very much so in the race. The odds took a huge blow here, right? You flip the San Francisco match, and now we're talking about them like a team I still think is probably going to get in there with how the other teams are doing. But now that one match, and all of a sudden it's iffy now, right? They need help from other people.
They do.
If I'm being honest, it's reminiscent of what we saw, say the Bills when they made the playoffs this year as a team. They were kind of in a similar boat, a little bit on the outside looking in. Needed a little bit of help at the end of the season to get in there. Still very, very possible. I just hope they got that memo, right? That you're still in it, guys. Just go out there and win out, and they're probably going to make it, right? Like 8-2 on the stage should have gotten them, should get them there. Because if they do win out, that means they've handed a loss to the Valiant, which have the potential to drop out. Though I don't see that happening anymore. I think they've done enough work already to stage to be pretty safe. And also they would have to beat Philadelphia.
Is going to be big. That's the last week. It's the second to last match. That's probably a win in for both teams. If I'm
very well could
extrapolating,
be, right?
And then
if Seoul doesn't rebound and become part of that conversation.
And man, if they need it needs to be a winning in for them, because if it's not, but they still have a chance, then their winning in is against New York, and man, I don't want to be playing a winning in against NYXL.
I wouldn't either, but the flip side of this is that New York might want to choose who makes the playoffs.
That's true.
And if you're Philadelphia, or if you're talking about, do you want to have the chance of maybe playing against Philadelphia, who's beaten them a handful of times?
One time.
Or once. Oh, didn't they end up? No, they didn't end the playoffs.
No, they reverse swept them, but it was very close for what it's worth. Yes.
Yeah, very close match there. Or Houston, who they would have otherwise swept, except for this matchup. They might, all right, Houston, you got it. Like, let's get in here. They might just literally go,
right,
here's dive for all 4 maps, Houston. Can you beat dive in this meta that doesn't let you run dive? Like, they could literally do that. And you just won't know until you get there. So that one, almost because of that reason right there, if we get into that scenario, it would almost be smart of Houston to do that in a way. Because I do think at the top end, when they're playing at their best, Philadelphia is just a scarier team, right? Yeah. You've got Carpe, who can easily stand toe-to-toe with Linkser. You've got either EQO or Shadowburn. When everybody's playing at their best, I think they get the nod against Jake in that position. So, and I do give the tank line a little bit of an edge for Houston there, but Houston or New York doesn't win their matchups based on tank line fights, right? They lose them. Right. Yeah, that's their biggest weakness on a team that really doesn't have very many weaknesses. So yeah, that might be the situation going into the final week, but just somebody please make sure Houston's aware that they're still in this thing. It's not as bad as they seem like it was. When they came out, they just didn't show up against San Francisco, which is really disappointing. And honestly, if they'd have just shown up in the final week of last stage and gotten the win against either San Francisco or Seoul, both teams weren't really in a great spot at the time. Houston just came out and didn't show up, and it's scaring me to see this kind of Philly level of inconsistency and badness materialize so late in the season. Like, what's going on there? Something's amiss in the locker room. Why was no leader able to rally the spirits and turn them around in the locker room after the LA match, which really they shouldn't have been down about? They should have been like, all right, we fought, this is what we can do better. But after the LA matchup happened and we lost, I even said in Discord, I'm like, this isn't the last time these two teams play this season. It's going to happen in the regular season playoffs, or it's going to happen in the stage playoffs. Right. Now it might not, but it didn't need to be like end of the world like apparently they thought it was, because they just completely blanked and didn't show up at all. It was really, really kind of honestly hard to watch. And people were saying that in the Discord, not even Houston fans. Like, man, this is hard to watch. Like, Houston haters are like, man, like, what is going on? This isn't cool. I don't want to see this. I want to watch them lose while they're playing their best. Like, I want to, like, when it's Boston, that's what I want to see.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, right now Houston is in the precarious place of being on the outside looking in, but being one of those teams that's like been like crawling up the whole time. Like, they've been in and out, and they're crawling up the whole time. Seoul has been at the top of the billing since the preseason, and has just trickled itself down. So it's really does not seem like the same. It does not seem like the same situation. So right now, I think Houston is the team that, if you're not already a fan of a playoff team, or, I mean, if you're not already a fan of New York, and you're looking for a really compelling storyline, Houston is definitely one of them. I think Philly is also potentially another one too, because they might jump out this week and then go back in, and then have to play some winning ins like we mentioned at the end. Like, I think that I mean, again, I'm sitting up at the top of the standings being like, yes, puppets, play for my benefit. I don't care who of you wins. I just need to defeat one of you in the finals. But I want to see the Philly versus Houston, like, winning in match. I think that would be
super hype.
That would be super hype, and I think that's where, like,
especially the history on that matchup. I think they've gone to 5 all 3 times.
Yeah, man.
Philly's never lost that one. I think they're 3-0 in that matchup right now. That would be really, really crazy if we got to that point.
I think that'll definitely be one of those ones where, like, remember in stage 1 when they lost to London, and they were just, like, defeated. They, like, poured everything out, and then they lost to like, that's going to be one of those matches, I think. Win or lose, it's going to be one of those ones where they pour everything out. But enough about that. Let's actually move on and talk about the matches for this week.
Oh, let's break it down.
As we break it down, we start off New York versus Philadelphia. We've both got New York here, 3-0. 97% of the fans are in favor of New York. I mean, Philly, like I said, the matchups have been a little bit deceiving here for Philly, so that I don't think that they're as bad as their record would lead them to believe, and because I think you have to give Dallas Fuel more credit, the Dallas Fuel loss a little bit more credit, but no. It's New York. Don't bet against New York.
Yeah, you're not betting against New York. And when we talk about this race is really close, and you look at it, and it's not. This matchup right here is part of the reason why we can say that it's still super, super close.
Mm-hmm.
The Fusion play against New York and the LA Gladiators this week, so it's a rough go for them.
Mm-hmm.
What they really need to do is, I think, figure out the plan. The plan doesn't need to be to play one of the two DPS players 100% of the time. They just need to have a plan for how they're going to use them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't think we've seen Philly really embrace the new meta very much, so I have some worries about them as far as the new meta is concerned. New York has embraced it a little bit more recently, but they also don't really need to, because they're actually just significantly better than everybody else, and they don't need to get the comp right in order to win in a lot of these matchups. This might not be one of them. There's definitely upset potential here, but like we talked about it, there's no picking against New York. Stop doing it. It's like voting for Shanghai, which some of you are still doing. Why? Don't do that.
They just don't care. Yeah, I mean, I want to see some more snow. I want to see the Snillapillow.
Snillapillow.
Because if New York is going to get their one loss in the stage, I'd like it to be against Philly, because they're my second favorite team, and the Snillapillow is. I want a Snillapillow. But I don't know how I'd be able to explain to my girlfriend the Snillapillow, but I
should just leave you for the pillow.
Yeah. Nope. I'm leaving her for the pillow. Not really. I'm kidding.
That's fair.
No, she's not.
It's not like a Jonak pillow. If it was a Jonak
pillow. If it's Jonak pillow. Not close. Not close. Let's move on. We've got Seoul Dynasty versus Shanghai Dragons. Mate, no. The Shanghai Dynasty match gets to happen this week, but we both got Seoul here, 3-0, and the 9% of the fans are picking Shanghai here. I mean, come on.
They're drunks.
It's still the same team, guys.
I just went on a diatribe about it. The only reason I've ever picked Shanghai since like stage 2 has been to troll Dallas fans. And that's basically been the sole purpose of it. You just can't pick them right now. Seoul seems to have gotten back to what I believe is the correct lineup decisions. You know, they brought Miro back in to play the main tank, and they have Jaehong back on the flex support, which moves Guido to the bench. I do think that's correct, but I'd be lying if I said there's not upset potential here. Shanghai does, I think, got themselves a little bit back closer to the correct lineup as well. It has less of an impact for them considering all their other issues, things like that. But the upset potential's there, just nothing you can even come close to trying to predict or say it might happen. Gotta go Seoul.
Yeah, no value here. No value on the flip here. Moving on, we've got LA Valiant versus LA Gladiators, the battle for LA. And I think it's lifetime. I think it's 2-1 Valiant, if I recall correctly. I could be wrong here. But we've both got Gladiators here, 3-0. 81% of the fans are in favor of Gladiators. I don't even know how close it is. Just on paper, I don't think it's very close right now, but for whatever reason, it seems like Valiant always step up their game against the Gladiators.
They certainly do. There's that rivalry factor matters quite a bit in these matchups for sure. This is also notably a battle of two 4-0 teams in the stage right now that are going to be meeting up. Valiant are phenomenal at having an easy opening to stage playoff or stage schedules, I should say. It's honestly for me what they're best known for so far this season. But I think this is a matter of like an average good team in the Valiant versus a team firing on all cylinders, playing at their absolute best right now. I think you've got to take the Gladiators in this one.
Yeah, and in 2 seconds, I'm going to know what the score actually is, who it's in favor of. It is in favor of, actually, the LA Valiant are up 2-1 lifetime. So
I thought they were,
yeah, I thought it was too. I just wanted to double check. Gladiators could have could even the score here, and I think it's very likely. 81% though, that it does have some flip factor here potentially. The Gladiator, the Valiant do have. I mean, if you're pining for points right now,
yeah, if you're super deep, if you're still on the outside looking in, trying to get into the money and the prizes here for the league, definitely worth it. But I personally think that percentage is about right.
Yeah, it's not bad. I didn't recall seeing a better flip
I didn't
yet.
learn my lesson after going all in on Houston after week 1 of this stage. I am all in on the Gladiators now. I'm not half-assing anything anymore. So go Gladiators. 81%, too low. Get it up, 9 more percent.
Maybe. Moving on, we've got London Spitfire versus Boston Uprising. We both got London here 3-0. 92% of the fans are in favor of London. Boston just doesn't look like the team that they were even the last 2 stages.
Boston's the new Dallas Fuel of this stage. A team with plenty of talent on the roster, just not really able to put it together. They continue to not be able to death ball. They continue not to really show any comfortability in the new meta with the new hero. They just seem to be getting countered hard. And apart from a couple decent maps in the one matchup last week, I'm blanking.
Boston played
I'm
against.
just dead inside. Is basically.
Yeah.
The Valiant. Yeah, they did steal a couple maps from the Valiant, but I can't imagine them flipping matchups where the maps aren't in their favor or anything like that going forward. And London did stabilize. Oh, that's the one thing in the news we should have talked about. London has decided to stabilize their roster. They essentially cut everybody but their main 6 on their roster, which I do want to take a minute to discuss this a little bit because I think it was a really, really confusing and silly move on London's part. Listen, we've been talking about it ad nauseum all season with this team. Why are you switching so much? What is going on? Why aren't you just running out your best lineup and letting them play? They really kind of made things a lot harder on themselves than they needed to as a result of this. But so I love the idea of this, right? To settle things into the roster, to do what we've been frankly asking them to do since their struggles began in stage 2. And now they're finally getting around to doing it. And is it too late? Maybe, probably not, because all the other teams trying to lose out right now too. Right. But what I question is, why is there no leader in that team? Why is there nobody in the building that can walk into a strategy meeting and look Hagopin in the face and tell him he's benched, and to look Closer in the face and tell him he's done for the season?
Because they fired him. They fired that leader.
To ship these guys back to Korea, which they did. Hagopin is now in Korea. Yeah. He's no longer with the team. He's not in the team house. Why are they so mismanaged and awkwardly run that they don't have a coach, a captain of the team, anybody that can deliver them? Because I can do it in like 10 words. I could sit down in front of a team and tell them who's going to play this week and for every week going forward, and let them know we don't plan on making substitutions anymore. We still want you here to be able to do internal scrims and stuff. Why does that not exist? Why do you need to cut these players and send them back home and take them out of the environment? Now you've basically already cut these players for next season, right? Like, how are you going to bring these guys back? You just publicly outed them and cut them, and you know what I mean? So it forced their hands to make these roster moves later in the year. It doesn't make any sense. Now, what happens when Birdring re-injures his wrist? Like, what happens when now you have to fly them back in from Korea? Do you even have a 7th person in the house? I don't know. Maybe they kept one extra around. But I don't think so. I think we're looking at it. I think they had 11.
I feel like it was only 6.
Because they sent TZ. Yeah, I think they're down to 6 exactly. I should have counted it before the episode. But so the right idea and just horrifically bad execution of that idea, in my opinion. And I love the transparency from Susie Kim, who by all accounts seems to really have a knack for the job. And, but you need a coach in there, a leader, a model, something.
Well, they do have 7.
They do have some. Well, that's good at least. But what if it's not? Like, what role did you keep? What happens if it's a tank that gets hurt and you've got a DPS lying around? You're fighting tooth and nail for your playoff lives right now. I think they open themselves up to risk that hopefully, in all likelihood, they won't have to answer for or pay for. But what if they do? It's a really questionable way to go about this and handle this. they're thinking old school esports still. They're not updating themselves to the season-long league. You had a free pass to not renew their contracts without a public statement or anything like that in the off season. Take advantage of it and just look your players in the eye and tell them, we're not using you the rest of the way unless an injury happens or unless something forces our hand here. We really need to focus on the roster. And I bet you every single one of those players would have understood it, and every single one of those players would have been okay. But I do appreciate the transparency from Susie. She did her best to articulate the reasons why, everything like that. You know, the players were feeling bad for each other, not getting play time and wanting to give them an opportunity to play. Well, it's got to be at some point somebody's job in that building to tell them to suck it up and to stay out there and to do what your bosses and what your coaches tell you to do. And I just don't think the way they went about this, they had the right idea and they executed it horribly. So I really struggled to fully grasp why London did that. At the end of the day, it might be exactly what they needed, because if nobody gets hurt, nobody gets sick, they're finally going to run the correct lineup. But a real thonker there. Now back to the matchup in particular.
Well, I actually have a couple of I have a couple of serious things to comment about that, but I also have a not serious thing. So I think the London staff and roster, or the London staff, is just telling their roster to literally C9 right now. Like, just don't be on the team. Just C9 the whole roster. But the serious things, there's a couple of things. At a macro level, I think the Overwatch League and the players specifically are in a weird, I mean, even the esports industry in general is in kind of a weird, almost transitionary period. And Overwatch League is kind of the first step in that transition. The period, of course, is the period between it being sort of informal tournaments and tournament structure, ladder play and whatnot, and going into, this is a sports league now. This isn't just tournaments and LANs. This is a sports league. And more importantly, this is a job. Now, there have been people who have done esports and played professionally as their job, but this is not just esports as a hobby that you get paid a lot for. This is esports as your career, and this is esports as, this is the big times now. So, or the big show. Like, this is, but we're still in a transitionary period where we're shifting from one to the other. So there's not like been years of, and more importantly, every single player in the league is a rookie. So if you think about it from that perspective, like, yeah, everyone's going to, like, people are going to do stupid stuff or like not understand, like, okay, this is an organization. And like if you like what you said, Death, I agree 100%. Someone needs to tell this guy to suck it up. But like, every single player, every single support staff, every coach, every single person is a rookie right now. And most of them are under 20 years old. So like, there really isn't a person in there to do that. And like, even so, like, in 3 years, yeah, Birdring might be that veteran guy that's like, yeah, no, rookie, hello, you're not going to play. Now everyone's on the same level and feels that maybe they should play, and like the players are friends more than they are coworkers, which is, I don't necessarily think a terrible thing, but there is, like, if it passes a certain point, like, it gets bad. So a lot of that. And the other thing, really quickly, is like, the only reason I could see them maybe going to Korea is it might have been the player's choice. If instead of wanting to do Overwatch League in Season 2, they wanted to do a contenders team and potentially get picked up through that medium. I don't think that it would be better to do that, but I also am not the players, so that's another possibility.
It didn't sound like that from what we heard from Susie, but it certainly could be. And it's just, I don't know, I just struggle to make sense of it. And you honestly summed it up best when we were talking about it shortly after it happened. And it's like, where is the announcement from San Francisco that IDDQD is on the inactive spot on their roster?
Do we still, like, can we still hold hope?
Do we need, right? So we were telling, so you're saying there's a chance, but it's so, like, we don't need that. You can just bench the players. Like, we'll figure it out when you, now as a content producer, thanks for the heads up. I can go out there and say it's definitely going to happen. As a
we just got player, 15 minutes of content. Thanks. Yeah.
That's the best. It's the greatest.
It's exactly what we want.
What are you doing? I don't get it. You don't need to help me do my job. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong.
I would rather them.
London.
Yeah.
But if Houston put out a statement right now, I would be upset. I'd be like, well, why wouldn't you leave the hope out there, right?
But
Like
what
you're
if it
going
was
against
Clockwork,
Shanghai.
though?
Bring out Mendo.
But what if it was Clockwork, though?
Bring out Mendo and Clockwork against Shanghai. I don't care. Just beat them. Okay, and then now you make teams wonder, well, hold on, is that a Clockwork map? Are we doing that again? Do we prepare for that? Do we think about like so you even just take the shadow of a doubt, the tiny insignificant part of it. I mean, and especially a team like London that was using them, they would have never stopped preparing for Hagelpin and Closer.
And for that reason, that's the main motivation for me thinking that maybe it was partly the players' decision to do it.
It could have been, but it's just, I don't know. You don't own the players, but you own their rights to work in this industry right now is, I think, the correct way to word it.
I agree. I don't disagree with you, but I also think that if a player is not happy for whatever reason, then it's probably a net positive to just let them go back to Korea if that's what they really want.
And are they allowed to sign a contract with a Contenders team while they're still in an OWL contract? Because I don't think they were released. The announcement said they were moved to inactive, which is not a designation in Overwatch League, to the best of my knowledge. It has no meaning. It doesn't actually do anything. You just moved half your team to Korea. And I'm still trying to figure out why.
Yeah, I don't know any of the I don't know any of the details behind that, so maybe we can try to get someone from London on potentially. That'd be an interesting interview to have if they're even willing to divulge anything at all, which they probably aren't. But that was a nice little detour on the matchups. I would say sorry, but I think it was a good discussion to have. Just at the
sorry
wrong
we didn't
place.
mention it during news.
Right? Yeah, it was at the wrong. It was in the wrong place. But I think a good one nonetheless. So
London 3-0.
Yeah, London 3-0. Not buying into Boston this stage yet. I don't really like. I don't. Did we talk about this? I'm already blanking on what we talked about beforehand. No, we did. I wouldn't like stage one. Us would not be picking Boston if we asked if Dive was dead, how good is Boston? We'd be saying not that good, and that's kind of where we are in a sense right now, or at least Tracer. But let's move on here. San Francisco Shock versus Dallas Fuel, and man, this is actually kind of monumentous here. I've got Dallas here 3-0. You've got San Francisco Shock here. And the fans are 50-50. So this is a coin map if I've ever seen one.
All right, Blevins, you got the coin?
No, I don't know where my coin is.
We'll just pretend like we cut your coin in favor of the beard coin that we've talked about. I've located it. It'll be handling the coin flipping duties.
It's like a beard tax coin or something?
Yeah, so apparently the story I heard, and I didn't stop from an official resource or anything, was that they used to tax you in Russia based off the length of your beard, and when you paid your tax, you got this coin. So that if anybody stopped you on the street to ask if you paid your beard tax, you could produce the coin and be okay. But yeah, so listen, I'm 50-50 on this matchup. This one is crazy close. Both of these teams are resurgent right now.
Yeah.
We did see Choi Hyo Bin debut for the San Francisco Shock. We did see the Dallas Fuel. Obviously, I believe they're 3-1 on the stage right now. Just running roughshod on people that aren't ready for Brigitte at the moment. I do think this one's going to be really close. It's going to go right down to the wire. I think this is going to have big stage playoff implications. I was leaning slightly towards Dallas, but when I'm looking at you pick Dallas, the fans are perfectly evenly split. I went with San Francisco 3-0 here. There's not much confidence to it, so we're going to let the coin handle it.
I flipped it in my head like 3 times before I actually picked.
Heads has the beard, and tails does not.
Okay, so heads is who?
Heads will be, well, let's go with the Dallas Fuel. And it is coming up heads here for the Dallas Fuel. So, the first instance of the beard coin, which has yet to ever be wrong.
I doubt it ever will be.
Overwatch League matchup. The beard coin has literally never been wrong, and it has just picked the Dallas Fuel.
Man, the Oracle, the real Oracle. We need to have a show where Bren predicts against the beard coin.
Oh, he would. He can't grow a beard, so he's the perfect person.
He is the antithesis of the beard coin. But man, this one is close. This is match of the week potential written all over it. But also at the same time, could be a complete flop one way or the other.
It couldn't be more impactful and couldn't be less impactful at the exact same time. Watch this one because it's just two teams playing at their best,
Right.
playing a game that you love. You know,
no
and
implications. I mean,
right,
stage
the
playoffs though.
Stage playoffs,
Stage playoff
fine, but
implications.
it's so hard to get excited about stage playoffs when you're staring end of season playoffs,
Stage
in the
playoffs.
face.
Stage playoffs.
But yeah, so keep an eye on this one. Very good match incoming.
Yes. Speaking of maybe good match, we've got Philadelphia Fusion versus LA Gladiators here. Both hosts are picking the LA Gladiators, and 81% of the fans are also joining us in that pick here. Look, I want to pick Philly, but man, it's tough to it's really tough to get that confidence back after you show what you did. Even though, again, I've said I think maybe we need to give Philly a little bit more credit this stage, but like given that, still LA Gladiators looks real strong right now.
Yeah, the Philly Fusion that we thought we saw in week 1 wouldn't have lost to the Dallas Fuel, regardless of how well the Dallas Fuel are playing, in the second week. So this is more to me about just the inconsistencies of it. That's why I don't have a map breakdown for you, because I think you can just throw the maps out the window, right? Like in this one, it's which Philly team shows up, and I just think the Gladiators are a more consistent team. And until they show some sort of hiccup or misstep here, I just can't really picture it being
if Philly was guaranteed to play good Philly this week, who would you pick? Or what would you bring the map score to?
I mean, I would still be picking it as a Cowards 3-0, but
if there's no points attached to it or anything, if you just had to like pick,
I would still be leaning Gladiators. I do think
maybe a 3-2 Gladiators.
Yeah, I think depending on when they play against each other, the Gladiators are really the team I'm highlighting as the ones that really can hand New York their loss of the stage at the moment. So.
Interesting. Next up, we've got Houston Outlaws versus Shanghai Dragons. We're never picking Shanghai until they do it, and even after they win, probably not until they win 2 or 3 more.
Well, yeah, because once they win, then it's over. It's behind them. They're never going to do like you right. Missed it. You missed the boat. So
no one, and then also no one cares. It's almost worse for them to win. Right. But 7% of fans. There's just like a consistent 7% of fans that are going to pick Shanghai every time because they want to be the first one. China. Great, good for you guys. Not going to happen. I can't even think of a scenario where there's.
Listen, the scenario is Houston shows up exactly like they did against the San Francisco Shock. I mean, if that team shows up and walks out of the locker room, the Shanghai Dragons can absolutely win it. But after a week of reset, this is the first match for Houston in the week. I just can't imagine them still coming out flat. Like they have a couple days to look at the standings and realize we're still in this. We can still do this. Look at what Philly has in front of them. If right. the Philly have the hardest schedule, the Outlaws have the easiest schedule. They come out of this one game apart and then they play against each other, and not in week 4, but in week 5. So if they both go 2-0 the next week or keep the same record, then you are talking about that like a win and in, and things get really, really interesting. So you're never picking Shanghai. And
it's also like it's a very important matchup for Houston because if they like randomly lose any of these like gimmies, like they're done.
Finished.
They're just done.
Yeah, they have to go 4 over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. So moving on, we've got Florida Mayhem versus Seoul Dynasty. We've both got Seoul here, 3-0. 88% of the fans are in favor of Seoul. I think the days of Florida really looking a lot better. It's just not. It's not materializing into anything. Obviously, Saya player, very good and popping off, but it's just not. It's not turning into victories here.
Yeah, I really couldn't have said it myself. Florida just can't put it together enough to find a way to win the matchups. I don't really have anything to add to it.
Yeah,
outside of that.
Even a crumbling Seoul. I mean, Florida again. They have nothing to play for. I mean, they have nothing to
you can
lose.
Tell
but
logic.
Right. So they're probably more in the we're going to just probably give people their last chance. This is kind of like probably tryouts for season 2 in a sense. So. The players, I guess, always need to perform, but the team and the organization right now not really playing for much. So not looking to pick them here. Would not flip. Moving on, we've got Boston Uprising versus San Francisco Shock. And just 3 weeks After the stage where Boston went 10-0, 84% of the fans are in favor of San Francisco. You and myself also picking them 3-0 here. I mean, this is a potential. I mean, this could flip for sure. I think 84% is probably a little high, but man, Boston is not looking good here.
Yeah, they're just completely in shambles. They're, like I said before, I think it's to treat them like you've been treating the Dallas Fuel, in the sense that they're only going to really maybe have that opportunity to get the wins against like your Shanghais, against your Florida Mayhems, things like that. That's where I would expect them to win, not against a team like San Francisco that's playing at the top of their game, even if they are in the past been tiers below. The future is very different from the past, as we're learning very quickly and being forced to relearn every single week, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, Boston, again, like we said before, really does not have a lot of a buffer in the playoffs right now. I think they have 2 weeks of, like, they could lose this week and still be in, but like it's not getting any easier for them. But moving on, we've got another coin flipper here. London Spitfire versus Dallas Fuel. I've got London here 3-0. You've got Dallas here 3-0. And the fans almost went back-to-back for the 50-50, but it's actually 51% in favor of London here.
Yeah, so London did look a little bit better. I mean, you did see kind of the resurgence of Bird Ring a little bit, and I do think that definitely will help them. And I think this one is going to be very, very close. There's a ton of 5-map potential here. A clear match of the week choice. This one is, again, I mean, both of the Dallas matchups, they're so hard to peg right now. I'm a little bit less all in on them than like their fans are at the moment, and thinking that they're just going to be like a shoe-in for the stage playoffs and things like that.
Like talking like it's already happened.
Right. And I'm not so sold on the fact that, you know, Arrow just completely flipped everything on its head. I just think they got a handle on the meta, and like they're the ones I think that are doing it right. Like even the Gladiators, and obviously to a lesser extent now, like the Houstons and the teams that we were talking about that look like they had a plan for the new meta and are going with it. I think that's all fine and dandy in the first week, but I think Dallas is more correct. Of all the teams that have a plan,
they've really
for this
leaned
meta,
into it.
Dallas has leaned into the Brigitte. They're a step ahead of people as far as how they're running it and how they're using it. They're starting to hit those big combos, you know, in the top 10 we're putting out later in the week. There's a big, huge play where Mickey instantly stuns the Reinhardt shield, and you see the hammer. You know, we talked about that combo and how impactful that would be in the tank versus tank fights, you know, the Rind games, as they like to call them. And it's just, you know, they're the ones that are doing those kind of things because they're more comfortable on it, and everybody else is going to be playing catch up a little bit. So I'm leaning very slightly on Dallas, and part of that is because I took San Francisco in the one before, and with 2 coin flips, like I don't think Dallas deserves to be predicted as an 0-2 team on the week, but I think they're going to find a way to
what does the Beard coin say about it?
The Beard coin is, man, he's right down the middle too. But let's see, we're gonna put Dallas on heads again, and then we'll put London on tails. See what we. And the coin is all over the Dallas Fuel this week. So
man.
Beard coin is going all in.
Smith is going to buy himself a beard coin.
We should buy himself a beard, at least a bigger beard. He's I think he's scruffy.
A little scruffy.
But yeah, so you know, the coin is all over the Dallas Fuel this week. I kind of want to be there, right? Like, because it's been honestly very exciting to watch them play in recent weeks, and all the jokes they make against them aside, I really have nothing against the team. I just like messing with their fans, and you know, I haven't been this excited since, you know, week 2 of stage 1 to really see the Dallas Fuel play. So I'm glad the coin picked went all in on them when I can't quite get myself to be there. But I'll tell you, if the Dallas Fuel leave this week 2-0, I'll be right there with you, fans.
Yeah, we might be having that discussion of Dallas Fuel being the best team in the stage. I don't think so, but maybe. Let's move on here. We've got NYXL versus LA Valiant. We both, of course, are not picking against New York yet. We've got the 3-0 here for them, and 98% of the fans are in favor of New York. I mean, this is actually a very big match for Valiant, because like if they can be the one loss to New York, that like just like solidly puts them like if you assume that New York is not going to lose more than one match in a stage, which has not happened yet, and they get to be that win, that's basically like an extra win over every other team that's by them, right? Or every other team that plays against New York, right? Because it's just a loss for them. Yeah. So that could be huge for LA Valiant. On the same on the same it's NYXL, and no.
This is a great team versus my average team, my quote unquote average team.
Yeah, the literally we've always had them like floating around. Like if you take every single person that has ever thought about the teams pick power rankings, they're just 6.0. That's their average across 8 million people.
That's real math that we didn't make up on the spot. So.
Definitely not.
But yeah, don't pick against New York.
Yeah.
Next.
These 2%ers are crazy. Last match of the week, we've got Florida Mayhem versus Houston Outlaws. Both got Houston here 3-0. 97% of the fans are in favor of Houston. I mean, again, Florida playing for basically nothing, not even a stage playoff bid at this point, unless they like turn everything 180 degrees, and Houston is in a must-win situation. So probably two different mindsets going into the match. And also Florida just doesn't look much better than they have in quite some time. So I'm not expecting much here out of Florida, and Houston is back against the wall.
Yeah, it's desperation means a lot, and my mental mindset makes a big difference. And I think, like you said, Houston has everything to play for. Florida has nothing to play for in this regard. So, listen, it's certainly possible. It's more possible than the Shanghai one. Obviously, if Houston just comes out flat again, you might even want to flip. Like if they come out flat and like lose to Shanghai, sure, you can flip this one.
If they lose to Shanghai, all bets are off.
Right, all bets do become off in this matchup. But until you see anything like that, or really even maybe a close one against Shanghai, you can't even really consider it. But I will say Saya player has the potential to do what Architect did to Houston at the end of last stage, and that is just single-handedly, like the man is an absolute beast. Thankfully, Florida likes to sub him out for no reason whatsoever randomly and bring Logix in, who's been playing well. Nothing against Logix. Thank you, Mr. Logix, for everything you've done this season. But, it's just Saya player cannot be wrong.
Yeah, it's like, it's like taking out Jonak. New York, I don't think ever has taken out Jonak. As long as he's been eligible to play, I don't think he's ever come out, and for good reason. It's just weird that no other team has really figured out that, like, if you have a star player that's really, really good, just keep playing them.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Honestly, Houston's like the one that's kind of done it. Like they stopped messing with Linkser after the first week of stage one. That's the one lesson they learned. There's not many. You don't see Profit come out for London. That's another one. But it's very few and far between that teams have somebody whose playtime is locked and loaded. And this is an instance
Carpe has come out a couple of times. I think I'm pretty sure he came out like 1 week. He came out a couple of maps, but that was a while ago. But that is going to bring us to the end of the episode. Do we have any iTunes reviews or anything to talk about here?
No reviews on either show, but please, guys, if you're enjoying the show, if you're a new listener, if you're an old listener, just hasn't gotten around to leaving a review, it would definitely be a big help to us. We'll read it on the air, put something funny in there, make fun of my Outlaws. Fuel fans, if you haven't left a review, now's your time. Hurry up.
Yeah, now you're really going to want to get them in.
Yeah, get them in, because I will read them. Whatever you tell me to write, I will read most of it.
As long as it's on air appropriate, it will be read.
Yeah, as long as
we don't need any effing tacos on the flagship show. You haven't had to fill
anything
the swear jar.
PG-13, we will read it for you. I think early in the life of the show, somebody made you read the Meow Mix jingle or something like that.
Sure did. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, have a little fun with it, guys. Leave us a review. It helps the show a lot. So if you're enjoying any of the content, the flagship, foul play, around the payload, any of the sister shows, All Things Considered and Blackwatch Report, definitely do leave us a message and leave a review. 5 stars. We'll read it out. And yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah. But that is going to be it, guys and gals. Remember, if you're listening live, or if you're listening the night it comes out, we're going to be having Around the Payload tomorrow, which is on Tuesday. It's going to be a good one. So definitely want to get in and watch that one. But that is going to be it, guys. You can always check us out, everything we do over at highnoonpodcast.com. If you want to interact directly, highly suggest you join the Discord. It is a life of its own. We have a large swath of fans of the show, of Overwatch League, podcasters. If you listen to any other Overwatch or Overwatch League podcasts, they're probably in here. The hosts are probably in, and they come in from time to time. Obviously, they have their own as well, but they do sneak in every once in a while. We've got Overwatch League staff. We've got players in here. All sorts of awesome people and discussions in the High Noon Podcast Discord. Again, that's discord.me/High Noon Podcast. If you do want to support the show in more ways than just the iTunes review, which again is a very, very effective way, there are two main ways to support the show. If you want to support us financially, you can go over to patreon.com/High Noon Podcast. That is a very good way to do it. And you can also go to our Twitch channel while we're streaming, which is on Mondays. And usually on Mondays, or always on Mondays, and sometimes on Sundays and Tuesdays as well. You can head over to twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. You can leave us a sub. You can use your Twitch Prime sub. You can donate, any of that stuff. Everything helps out a ton. It helps us do stuff like be able to go to the Overwatch League finals. It helps us do stuff like go to BlizzCon and do the giveaways like we're doing for the Pick'em League. All that stuff is in very large part to the patron support and the Twitch subscriber support, all that stuff. But
a personal goal, something I'd love to be able to do with the Patreon account, is if we can get to the point where we can alternate which one of us goes to like stage playoff weekends and stuff like that. If the patron could really help us get out there, I would love to be more involved in the actual media scene, like at the events, things like that. But it's just so far away that it's really tough. Any amount of help that the patrons can do will help us get there next season, since we do think it's going to play out in Burbank again for one more year. We really want to get to the arena. So I mean, if you're wondering, it's not just aimless sending, like you're helping us make more content, get more interviews with players, stuff like that. So.
For reference, if we wanted to go just for a weekend and assumed that we had a place to stay already, like a friend or something, it would probably cost us $400 to $500 each to get there, roughly. Maybe a little bit less, but probably in that ballpark. So that's kind of why we don't go to these things.
More than that. That would cover the plane tickets to get there. Then we'd need to buy the tickets to get in the door.
Those are only like $20, and we might be able to get media passes. But like $500 conservatively. So like that's kind of like, oh well, I mean, we don't really get this criticism, but if you're wondering why we don't go to the matches, it's because we live on the other side of the country and it's not free for us to fly there. But yeah, so any and everything does help. But that's enough sellout for this episode, guys. That is going to be it. Remember to watch Around the Payload tomorrow. But for Death Blow, I'm the Blevins, and remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now guides my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
I think if Dallas Fuel go 2-0 this week, they should just automatically be put in first place.